Hey, how's it going? We're here on a new episode of Influences. I'm Ron,
I'm Zach.
I'm Brian.
and we're going to talk about Pink Floyd today.
Yeah.
This is Brian's first time with us on this episode, and it just would not have been right to do this without do a Pink Floyd segment without Brian here. So, Brian, you want to give us some of your initial impressions that you want to share about Pink Floyd with the folks out there?
Absolutely. First thing I'd say is Pink Floyd is probably my favorite band of all time, and wherever my brother is right now, probably in Ohio, he took me to my first concert, which was to see Roger Waters on his first solo tour. The first song that I ever saw performed live was Welcome to the Machine, which is why it was awesome when I got into this project. That's the first thing Ron and I worked on. That's good karma.
Yes.
But, you know, I got into Pink Floyd when I was in my early teens, and just the sound alone, especially after seeing that concert, really resonated with what I was feeling as a kid. I connected with albums like The Wall, Wish You Were Here. You know, in that day we listened to stuff on cassette and headphones pretty often, and that stuff just resonated so much in my soul and grew with me. You know, initially I just had an appreciation for the sound of it and the mood. You know, I'm a movie guy, and Floyd has a cinematic quality to their music that few other bands have. There's kind of that gloomy blues quality, but they really do it like nobody else. They have a definitive sound that has carried through their career and evolved. You know, what you hear Pink Floyd sound like on Echoes and before hints at what they're going to be later on.
Yeah.
But the evolution that band went through over a number of years, I mean, some bands really have a run that might last 5, 6, 8 years, something like that. Floyd reaches longer than that and makes classic records for a string there on a level that, you know, few bands have for sure.
Zach, you're kind of just recently connecting with a few of the songs. What are some of the tunes that are kind of banging around in your head these days?
I don't have too many. I listen to Echoes all the way through on a pair of nice headphones, and it's worth listening to on a pair of nice headphones.
See, that's cool to hear, because that's what I'm talking about.
It's
Here
a
we are,
headphone band.
years removed from my experience of it. That's exactly it. There's just such a quality to that stuff.
Yeah, if ever there was a headphone band, it's Pink Floyd, and especially since that they use they were the first band, I believe, to use the quadraphonic.
Yeah, I know that's what they were known for. And when I saw Roger Waters in 1985, he played in quadraphonic sound, which was one of the things that just blew my 14-year-old mind.
Yeah, jeez.
So.
Yeah, my uncle, maybe a few of you read the Pink Floyd blog that I wrote a while back about my uncle turning me on to Pink Floyd. And as Brian said, it's an interesting evolution, because they started out in the late 60s with Syd Barrett as their original singer, and they were a whole different thing back then. They were kind of an artsy pop band in London in the late 60s. And when Syd Barrett kind of went insane, the rest of the band got David Gilmour, but they were in search of an identity for a number of years, and so they made movie soundtracks for foreign films, and there's just no cohesion to it. They were just throwing everything up against the wall in search of an identity. And as you guys mentioned with Echoes, that they, by their own statements, they say that's when things kind of came together for them. They had that aha moment, and right after that it was Dark Side of the Moon, and from that point on is history.
Yeah, Waters starts to take over the lyric writing duties in that era.
Yeah.
And that really represents a big change for the band. It's interesting to think that, in the area, particularly psychedelic drug use and everything, in that era, that Syd Barrett, after being kind of the banner carrier for Floyd and the London scene in that regard, ends up becoming the biggest casualty of it. And it is actually kind of an influence on the band for years after. Wish You Were Here is, very much about themes that have to do with Syd Barrett. But Waters, this is another thing, is the adversity of having your front man and your creative force in Syd Barrett go nuts.
Yeah.
And here you are kind of rising and coming into your own as artists, and now there's this void, and someone's got to step up to fill this adversity.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, those guys had to evolve. They had to get Gilmour involved. There was a time where Barrett and Gilmour were both in the band, but not very functionally at all. But it's interesting to see that out of just the roots of that, of Waters kind of being thrust into being a singer and a songwriter, and Gilmour having to step up and really carry all the guitar duties at that point. You see these guys evolve into greatness, and in a pretty short amount of time. When you go from Echoes to, metal, when you go from metal to Dark Side of the Moon,
it was just supercharged by that point. Yeah.
For those who have not heard Dark Side of the Moon, if there's any of you out there, go listen to it. It's probably the greatest album of the 70s.
Yeah.
Stayed in the Billboard charts for like 700 weeks or something.
Yeah,
and
it holds the world record. In that
really represents, in my opinion, the best lyric writing that Waters has done. And Waters has written some great lyrics, but in that era, I mean, he's like 27 or something at that time. He's in his late 20s. Just wrote some of the most beautiful, the lyrics to Time alone are so...
Zach, you were saying that those are your favorite lyrics.
Favorite lyrics of any, of a lot of songs.
It's just absolutely beautiful. And then, you go on to Wish You Were Here. The title cut, Wish You Were Here, has some of the most beautiful and telling lyrics. Waters, I know, was influenced by, different writers of that time, but especially Lennon, and Dylan.
Yep.
And it shows.
It's a real interesting thing in that regard to hear he's one of those artists. I kind of totally off subject, but Prince comes to mind, where the influences are real obvious, and yet he was able to transcend them and not be derivative of those artists.
I think that's a good comparison. Is that it took what was kind of present in the era.
Yeah.
But formed a diamond.
It has such a distinct artistic personality, and then by the time the 70s were wrapping up, my all-time favorite album, Animals, came out. The punk movement during the late 70s was really gaining steam, and Pink Floyd, Waters in particular, were feeling very reactionary about it and wanting, and very aggressive. And I think that was the first sign of the cynical Waters. You got a little hints of it on Wish You Were Here with Have a Cigar and such, but that's when the cynical, more well-known Roger Waters, the cynical side, came out, and there's the lyrics are very biting and venomous on Animals, and the album is not a very hopeful album, quite bleak. Even the album cover is just like bleak, but there's just something about the music on that album that just, for me personally, it's just one of the greatest albums I've ever heard. And of course after that came off the tour of that, and the experiences that they had moving into stadiums, and how alienated they felt from their audiences, specifically in America, where people were just showing up, like they do to arena shows, partying and throwing firecrackers on stage and making noise during their quiet parts. And Waters, it's kind of a famous tale, but their very last show was in Montreal on their 1977 Animals tour, and he had had it up to here with the whole scene, and some kid was climbing the fence trying to get at him, and Waters kind of waved him over to him. The kid, oh cool, Roger Waters wants me to come up by it, and Roger Waters just hauled off and spit in the kid's face. And upon reflecting on that whole moment, he was horrified with his behavior and went on to examine how that could come to be, and from there the Wall was born. And as you know, the Wall is one of the most top-selling albums, certainly top-selling double albums of all time.
Yeah, that brings up another thing that's key to Pink Floyd, kind of synonymous with Pink Floyd, is the idea of the concept album. Nobody has ever done concept albums better
No.
than Pink Floyd has. That's one of the things that I really enjoyed about them over the course of their career, and kind of didn't like about later Floyd post-Waters, is that I didn't feel like they executed concepts as well.
Yeah.
This brings up another thing. Pink Floyd as a live act, from the beginning, sought to really be an experience, and that was an aspect of Waters' creativity that was present then, and just kept carrying larger and larger. For them to play in quadraphonic sound, and then for them to use visuals and props, the British Spitfire crashing into the stage on the Dark Side of the Moon tour. On the Animals tour, they're using these giant inflatable things. They had the famous stunt for shooting the record, the cover for the record at Battersea Power Station, where the balloon, the big pig balloon had gotten untethered. And the whole "if pigs could fly" thing became a literal joke,
It's real. When it makes me think of the whole idea of chemistry with that band, because since they've split up, you got Roger Waters doing his own thing, and he's really successful with it. It's kind of a tribute act to the old days, doing their hits and stuff. And Pink Floyd is now basically defunct. But when they were carrying on without Roger Waters, it for me personally, there was just something about Waters and Gilmour teamed together. With Gilmour, you had all the hook, you had all the melody, and the just an amazing guitar player, amazing singer.
The sound, absolutely.
But Waters was the substance. He wrote the majority of the music, wrote all the lyrics, had all the concepts, and he was the idea man. And there's, for us personally as a band, we've reflected a lot on the idea of chemistry, and especially finding this lineup here. We all are starting to click, and we're in the process of getting drummers together, and it's finding that fourth element to finally bring this to a live setting is going to be pivotal. But Pink Floyd has served as a really good template in terms of just the right chemistry and finding the right mood and how things complement each other. So
yeah, they're one of the big colors in our palette for sure. Yeah. One thing that can't go unmentioned, we talked about Waters, is Gilmour over the course of his career just becomes an absolute guitar god and a juggernaut. And just his guitar work on Dark Side of the Moon is among the greatest performances in history, and he continues to up his game almost for the rest of his life.
Wish You Were Here is he's personally said it's his favorite Pink Floyd album, and my God, his playing on Shine On You Crazy Diamond, or even the subtleties of something like his work in Welcome to the Machine, Have a Cigar. He's like you said, he just kept getting better and better. By the Wall, Animals is just the song Dogs to me is just like, that's Gilmour. If aliens came down and said, "Play us, well, who is this David Gilmour of which you speak?" I would just put on Dogs and say, "Listen to this." But and then by the time he got to The Wall, it was just everything that came out of him was just
gold.
It was comfortably numb. I mean, the lead guitar at the end of that song is as good as lead guitar gets.
That's
be honest,
my all-time favorite guitar song.
Yeah, it's
easily. That's probably what made me want to play guitar.
Deservedly so. It's so good. Yeah. But well, we're coming up on 15 minutes here, and we haven't even scratched the surface about Pink Floyd. We could go on and all day, but we welcome your comments. And as we said before, this is just a starting point. These hopefully these conversations gain some momentum, and these are things that continue on. Eventually, we're going to be doing some local bands that we enjoy, and we're really looking forward to that. But we'll continue covering the gamut of these better known bands in the meantime, and pretty soon, hopefully, we will see you in person and we can have more conversations at that time. Until next time, keep on rocking. We'll talk to you soon.